The day they handed me the eviction notice, I didn't raise my voice, didn't slam the table, didn't even blink. I just slid the old yellow deed across the desk and watched the smile drain off her face like someone pulled a plug. 310 because people don't expect you to fight back when you've been gone too long. They expect you to fold. They expect you to say guess I missed my chance and walk away. That's what they were counting on. My name is Caleb Reed, I'm 35, from Driftwood. To me, Atlanta was childhood. It was scraped knees and sunburns, the smell of mesquite smoke, the sound of cicadas so loud at night you couldn't hear your ondo, and that's where everything went wrong. My granddad, Earl, everyone he didn't make money on it. He never tried. He used to say, if your neighbor's field is dead, yours is next. That them fed families for the fast forward to me, halfway across the world, in uniform, managing water systems in villages where kids land up with jugs at sunrise because if you missed your turn, you didn't drink that day. It changes you, that kind of work. Makes you see water as El while my sister El lives in Oregon, they paid the taxes. That's when I'm president of the South. Early I've done pick, just happened small town coincidence, right? I came home in late summer, dust still in my boots, expecting to see pasture and oak trees. Instead, I saw survey flags, bat coys, concrete forms, and a row of half-framed houses where our back pasture used to be. I honestly thought he'd taken a wrong turn. He pulled over, stared, then drove the fence line 3 times before it sank in they were building on my land. When I asked the foreman what the hell he thought he was doing, he shrugged and said, we got permits, man. This is Silverleaf property now. That was my first real taste of rage in a long time. Not the hot kind. The quiet kind that settles in your chest and stays. The sheriff showed up, awkward as hell, and explained that while I was deployed, the HOA had filed an adverse possession claim on the unused portion of the property. Claimed they'd been maintaining it, improving it, fencing it. Which was funny, because I had photos of cattle grazing there 6 months earlier. Then Marjorie rolled up in her golf cart like she owned the place. Your family abandoned this land, Caleb, she said, hand on her hip, voice sweet as tea. We're just making it useful for the community. And then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and added, you should have stayed closer to home. I remember thinking, this woman has no idea who she's talking to. That night, I walked the property line with a flashlight and noticed something that made my stomach drop. The creek. The creek that fed Pop's dam was running thin. Tosin. Someone had diverted it. Slappy hop, to. Freezers, plastic piping, cheap erosion control. They weren't just stealing land. They were stealing water. Over the next week, it got worse. Construction crews ran double shifts. The HOA started posting on community boards about unstable individuals and safety concerns. I got noise complaints when I ran equipment. Health inspections. Animal control. A wellness check from veteran services. Pressure from every angle. Marjorie would wave at me from her car like we were neighbors. One afternoon she stopped me at the gate and said, you know, Caleb, you could make this all go away. We're offering fair compensation. Fair, in her world, meant a third of what the land was worth. He told her no. That's when the tone changed. The zoning change came next. Emergency meeting. No notice. Suddenly our land was marked residential development. Funny how that works when your husband sits on the board. The lawyer I hired quoted me $80,000 just to challenge it. He hung up and laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. Because while they were playing paperwork chess, they had no idea what I was looking at. One night, digging through county records like I was back on patrol, I found Pop's original dam permit. Federal design. Army Corps oversight. Flat management classification. Which meant something very important. It wasn't just a farm pond. It was federally regulated infrastructure. And then, buried even deeper, I found it. A 1921 water rights deed. Senior rights. Whole watershed. Signed by my great-grandfather. He just sat there in the courthouse basement staring at it, dust in my nose, heart pounding, thinking, they really picked the wrong land. Outside, Marjorie was telling reporters the dam was dangerous. That children were at risk. That I was unstable. That the community needed protection. And maybe she believed that. Or maybe she just believed she was untouchable. Either way, she had no idea what was coming. Because I didn't come home to start a war. But I wasn't about to lose Pop's legacy to a woman in tennis shoes with a zoning board husband and a taste for other people's property. Not then. Not ever. And that was the moment I stopped reacting and started planning. Once you realize someone is trying to take something from you, the world gets real quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Focused quiet. The kind where every sound has weight and every detail feels loaded. That's where I was. Every morning I watched their concrete trucks roll past my gate like they belonged there. Every evening I walked the creek line and watched the water level drop inch by inch, like someone slowly bleeding the land out. And the thing that kept looping in my head wasn't the anger. It was Pop's voice. If your neighbor's field is dead, yours is next. That them wasn't just dirt and water. It was a promise. And they were breaking it. So I started documenting. Photos, timestamps, drone footage, flow measurements, all of it. Old habits die hard. When you've spent years in places where missing one detail can get someone killed, you learn to see patterns. And this was a pattern. The creek diversion wasn't this sloppy anymore. It was intentional. Clean. Designed. They were feeding decorative ponds and runoff channels for houses that didn't even exist yet. And every gallon that went there didn't go downstream. That's when I called Ethan Hale. Ethan and I served together. It went EPA after the Military Enforcement Division. He hadn't talked to him in years, but he picked up on the second ring. He told him what was happening. It went quiet. Then he said, Caleb, if they're diverting a natural waterway without federal clearance and your dam is federally permitted, they're in deep trouble. Deep trouble. The good kind. The kind that makes powerful people nervous. The harassment ramped up right after that. Hoa safety patrols started parking at my entrance. They wrote down license plates. Took pictures. One of them followed my sister when she came to visit. He got cited for unsightly structures. My barn was built in 1968. The building inspector came by 3 times in 1 week. The fire marshal twice. A health department once. Animal control claimed my cattle were a noise disturbance. I remember standing there with my hands on my hips thinking, wow, they are really committing to this. Marjorie would drive by slow, window down, smile tight. Still here, Caleb, she'd say. Like a joke. Like a threat. One afternoon she brought her husband. Don Pique, zoning board, polished shoes, politician handshake. He looked at my farmhouse like it offended him. You need to think about your future, he said. Progress is coming whether you like it or not. He told him, so is federal law. It didn't laugh. That's when the rumors started. Social media posts about my mental health. I never concerned about my behavior. A local blog calling me volatile. Then came the wellness check. A social worker showed up, kind, apologetic, clipboard in hand. Said someone was worried about my stability. He didn't need to ask who. Being here, across the road, Marjorie sat in her golf cart watching like she was supervising. That one hit a nerve. Because there is a special kind of law in using someone's service against them. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with Pops, old notebook spread out, reading his handwriting, smelling the dust and coffee stains, feeling the weight of every choice they made for this land. And something clicked. This wasn't just about me. It never was. He drove downstream the next morning. First stop was the Santos place. 3 generations of farming. The irrigation ditch was dry. Miguel Santos came out, hat in hand, eyes tired. Water hasn't run right in months, he said. We thought it was just the heat. It wasn't the heat. Next stop was Mrs. Liu, 82, garden brown and brittle. She'd lived there since the 70s. The creek sang at night, she said softly. Now it's quiet. He kept driving. Everywhere I looked, I saw the same story. Crops struggling. Wells dropping. Ponds shrinking. And up the hill. Facade and stone pathways. That's when this stopped being personal. That's when it became something else. He called Ethan back. Told him everything. He said, I'm opening a file. That's when I called Rachel Moore. Environmental attorney. Known for being relentless. And for not backing down from bullies. She listened. Quiet. Let me finish. Then she said, they have no idea who they picked. We met 2 days later. She looked over the documents, the permits, the deed, the diversion footage. Her smile was slow and dangerous. Oh, this is going to be fun. She filed 3 complaints that week. Federal environmental violation. Water rights infringement. Wildlife habitat destruction. And she didn't stop there. She contacted the state banking regulator. Because guess what banks love? Stability. Guess what they hate? Fraud. And if your development loans are based on water access you don't legally have, that's a problem. Meanwhile, Marjorie was busy playing the victim. Local news ran a piece about a reclusive veteran blocking community development. They used a photo where I was mid-blink, face shadowed. She stood in front of her model home with 3 moms and a stroller, talking about children's safety. I watched it with my jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. Then she crossed the line. She went to my sister. Showed up in Oregon, unannounced, with concern in her eyes and lies in her mouth. Told Lena I was unstable. That they threatened people. That I needed help. Lena called me laughing. Some lady in tennis clothes just tried to get me to sign over your land, she said. Should I be worried? I told her, only about how stupid she is. The next morning, I found tire tracks near the dam. Freeze. Someone had been poking around the spillway. That's when I installed trail cameras. And that's when things got real. 3 nights later, 2 men in tactical gear tried to tamper with the control housing. They didn't notice the red blink. They didn't notice the deputy parked a quarter mile away. They noticed the handcuffs. Turns out pouring concrete into hydraulic lines is not a good look when you're claiming to protect public safety. Marjorie said nothing. Don said nothing. But the pressure intensified. Eminent domain letter arrived. Public safety concern. Laubal offer. Deadline. He laughed again. Darker this time. Because while they were scrambling, he was learning things. Like the fact that Silverleaf Heights had been denied flood insurance twice before suddenly getting approved. Like the fact that the environmental assessments were copy-pasted from another county. Like the fact that Marjorie had done this before. In another city. Same playbook. Rachel found the case. $2 million fine. Creek diversión. She left town before sentencing. Patterns. The dam, though, the dam was the key. He crawled through the old access tunnel one night, flashlight bouncing, boots scraping concrete, and there it was. The emergency spillway gate. Original Army Corps hardware. Untouched in decades. Steel solid. He ran my hand over the steel and felt something like respect. Pops built this to last. He pulled out his journal and found the entry. Open spillway today. Elped 3 farms through the dry spell. He sat there on the cold concrete floor and just breathed. Because suddenly the path was clear. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of water. And water always wins. But it had to be done right. Legal. Clean. Controlled. He called Rachel. He said, if I restore natural flow, she didn't hesitate. You're fulfilling a covenant, she said. Not violating one. That's when we started planning. And that's when Marjorie started panicking. She called an emergency HOA meeting. Claimed the dam was a threat. Hired a private security company. Filed for a restraining order. She went on morning TV with a trembling voice. This man learned to weaponize water overseas, she said. Now he's bringing that here. He almost choked on my coffee. Weaponize water. Lady, you don't even know what that means. But the narrative was forming. And narratives are dangerous. That's when the calls started. From people I didn't know. From farmers. From neighbors. From families who they've been pushed out. Stories sporting same pattern. Pressure. Zoning changes. Offers. Harassment. I wasn't alone. I just hadn't known it. We met in Mrs. U's backyard. Folding chairs. Thermos coffee. Old photos spread on picnic tables. You could feel it. They shift. From fear to anger. From anger to resolve. Rachel called it a coalition. He called it overdue. The weather forecast came in that night. Heavy rain in 3 days. The kind that fills creeks. The kind that tells the truth. He stood at the dam at sunset, hands on the rail, wind in my face, and felt something settle in my chest. Not rage. Not revenge. Purpose. Because sometimes the only way to expose a lie is to let the truth flow. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to end in a courtroom. It was going to end in water. By the time the storm clouds started stacking on the horizon, everything was in motion. Rachel had filings in federal court. IOpened had an open investigation. The coalition had statements ready. The volunteer fire chief was on standby. And Marjorie. Marjorie was losing her grip. You could feel it. She drove past my gate 6 times in one afternoon. Windows down. Phone in hand. Filming. That night, 3 more HOA members showed up with lawn chairs and signs like it was a tailgate party for outrage. Protect our neighborhood. Stop the dam. I watched them from my porch, coffee in hand, and thought, you have no idea what you're standing on. At 2:13 de la mañana, my phone buzzed. Trail cam alert. 2 figures near the spillway housing. Flashlights. One crouched. One standing watch. Didn't they even put my boots on? Grabbed the keys, drove the back trail, headlights off. By the time I rolled up, the deputy was already there. Turns out Ethan had tipped them off. One guy had a bag of quickset concrete. The other had bolt cutters. They tried to say they were concerned residents. Concerned residents don't carry concrete. At 2 de la mañana Marjorie's name came up. Again. By morning, the local paper had a photo of the arrest. Her quote was, impressive. I fear for the safety of our families with unstable individuals escalating their behavior. The audacity. Rachel laughed when she read it. Sis digging, she said. Let her. Then came the restraining order attempt. Emergency hearing. Jorge Harris. Sammy Judge Don Pike played golf with. Rachel filed for recusal. Filed an ethics complaint. Filed a motion to dismiss. We knew the fix might be. That's when Marjorie went nuclear. She called veteran services. Claimed I was suicidal. Claimed I was unstable. Claimed I was a danger. A social worker arrived at my door at 5:40 de la mañana, rain starting to spit from the sky. He stood there in a flannel and jeans, coffee in hand, damn release plan on the counter behind me. She was kind. Professional. Uncomfortable. We talked. He showed her the paperwork. The permits. The filings. The plan. She looked at me, then at the documents, then back at me. Sir, this looks very organized. He smiled. Tired. Ma'am, I was trained to build infrastructure in war zones. I promise you, this is the conversion. She closed her clipboard. I don't think you're a danger, she said quietly. I think someone wants you gone. A smart woman. At 6:15 de la mañana, Rachel called. Federal agents are en route. EPA, wildlife, anking. They moved the inspection up. He looked out the window at the dark sky. Perfect. At 6:45, the protesters were back. Mams. Sings. Phones. Liebe streaming. Marjorie stood front and center, hair perfect, voice trembling. It's going to flood our homes, she said. He learned this overseas. He stepped out onto the porch. She froze. He met her eyes and said, you should move. She laughed. You wouldn't dare. She still thought this was about me. At 7:02 de la mañana, I turned the valve to 25%. The gate groaned, old steel waking up. Then, the sound. Not a roar. A return. Water moving where it remembered being. The creek bed darkened. Then glistened. Then filled. Miguel was standing downstream. He saw him drop to his knees. MRS, you put her hand over her mouth. The reporters leaned in. Marjorie screamed. It's flooding us. Nothing flooded. Not 1 yard. Not one foundation. Just the creek, flowing. Exactly where it used to. Exactly where it was supposed to. The EPA agents arrived as the first surge settled. They watched. Measured. Nodded. This matches historical flow, one said. Marjorie lost it. You have to stop him, she yelled. Arrest him. The agent looked at her. Ma'am, is in compliance. Her face. Y ella never forget it. The realization. The shift. The moment the control slipped. Don Pac showed up 10 minutes later, red-faced, phone glued to his ear. This is going to cost millions, he hissed. Rachel recorded. A notice too late. By 8:30, the banks had called. By 9, construction was halted. By 10, the restraining order was dead. By noon, the news narrative flipped. Local veteran restores natural waterway. Community reclaims stolen creek. Federal investigation opens into HOA development. Marjorie tried to speak. No one listened. The courtroom that afternoon was packed. Farmers. Neighbors. Reporters. Federal agents. Her attorneys painted me as a threat. Rachel dismantled them. Permit. Covenant. Deed. Testimony. Video. Then Miguel spoke. Then MRS, you. Then the fire chief. Then Eason. The judge leaned back and sighed. Motion denied, he said. All of them. Don stood. Tried to leave. The agent tapped his shoulder. Sir, we need to talk. Marjorie sat there, frozen. The next 6 months were quiet. Beautifully, brutally quiet. Don pled out. Zoning fraud. Conflict of interest. 3 years. Marjorie filed for bankruptcy. Civil penalties. Lost. Everything. Silver left dissolved. The creek was protected. The land was rezoned agricultural conservation. The water came back. And so did everything else. Birds. Fish. Frogs. Life. Miguel replanted. MRS, Youth Garden bloomed. Kids played in the creek where houses were supposed to be. Rachel and I, we kept working together. Funny how fighting corruption builds chemistry. Sometimes I sit on the porch at dusk, watch the water move, and think about Pops. How will they smile? How will they say, told you it would matter? This wasn't their revenge. It was restoration. And if you've ever been pushed, bullied, lied about, or made to feel small by people with power, you know exactly why this mattered. So ella ask you. Was I right? Was I wrong? Should I have fought the system, or let the water fight for me? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. I love them. And if you've got an HOA story, a land story, or a moment where you stood your ground when they didn't expect you to, share it. Because these fights don't end. And the more we talk about them, the harder it gets for people like Marjorie to hide. Water finds a way. So does truth. And sometimes, you have to let both run.